Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Kavya. Ah, what is this Saturday 28th? Huh?
This Saturday, sir.
Hmm, the coming Saturday.
Yes, sir, 28.
Okay. So, shall we get going?
Yes, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Rasagna. Good afternoon, actually.
Oh,
It
good
doesn't
afternoon,
matter.
sir.
It doesn't matter for me. There is only two morning and evening. That's all. So, I don't have all these forenoon, afternoon.
Why, sir?
These are all our divisions. So why complicate life? So I just take it as morning and evening. So life is much simpler that way. But you have to rely on these timings. And my wife is somebody who hates this 24-hour clock. Okay, like 1300 hours, 1400 hours. She doesn't like that. So she likes, 12 p.m. I say actually this is better because there's no confusion. That's why all the airlines and all of them right now, even I think trains were following the timing of 24 hours. Yeah. Anyway, so let's get going. The last time that I met you, I was talking to you about Mr. Kautilya and how he talked about the sources of power of the uh, king. Uh, now, I just wanted to understand one thing. Kautilya did not believe in divine right of kingship. That was not a principle ever used in India. It was used in the West, but for some strange reason, Indian writers have also started talking about divine right when they are writing about Indian history. There never was a divine right. Okay, God ordained wasn't ever a principle in ancient India. That's one of the things you have to understand. And that's the reason why dynasties also used to change so much, because it was all about the leadership of a particular king. Okay, and Pushyamitra, whose story I told you, who started the Shunga dynasty after the assassination, or after he assassinated uh, Brihadratha, uh, that was because Brihadratha was a poor leader. He wasn't much of a leader. Okay, he wasn't leading very well, and therefore Pushyamitra decided to take advantage of it, and he established his own dynasty, which came to be called the Shunga dynasty. Now, if you look at Chanakya's various fragments, or Kautilya's various fragments, it does appear as if uh, Kautilya is somebody who did not believe, let's not call it divine right and all that and make it complicated. Let us simply say he did not believe in the whole concept of king by descent. Okay, descent is Descent, not Dissent. Descent, which means that, you know, my father is king, so I will be the next king. He didn't believe in that. Please excuse me, my throat is gone for some reason. Yeah, so the main thing is that he believed that it should be a good leader who should become the ruler of a kingdom, and this good leader should show his leadership qualities, his um, ability to rule to the people, and he should make himself acceptable to the people of a kingdom. Okay, so he believed that that way there would be. What is wrong with Yasmin? Why does she go on calling me? Anyway, so if we look at the whole idea of, um, I'm very distracted. Sorry. Yeah, the whole idea that we have of leadership, uh, Kautilya or Chanakya basically argues and says that one has to prove himself as a king, and uh, it is only with the acceptance of a king that you will have acceptance of the people, rather, sorry, of somebody as king. Only then will you be in a position to primarily uh, occupy the throne. And he says, after the occupation of the throne, it is not like your job is done. It's not done. Your job is not complete. Okay, your job is never complete. A king always should be on his toes. You remember we talked about utsaha, energy. So he should be energetic in every matter that pertains to governance. And it is such a king who will be loved and accepted by the people. And if he is actually loved and accepted by the people, then there is complete legitimacy to the ruling or the rule of that particular king. That is what Kautilya talks about. Okay, the legitimacy. He says you cannot get legitimacy by descent. You know what legitimacy is? That which is legally acceptable. Okay, I will be coming to that very shortly, uh, because in the Arthashastra, there is a section on legality and laws. We'll talk about them in just a few moments. But before I do that, I just want to finish with this king thing. Well, I didn't intend to say it like that, but it came out like that. All right. So, what we need to understand is that uh, the king should be legitimate, and legitimacy comes from acceptance of the power of a king by the people. So he says it's not by descent that somebody should become a king. Such a kingdom will not prosper because somebody may have the qualities of leadership, may not have the qualities of leadership, may be able to govern, may not be able to govern. We don't know. So he therefore says that, it is entirely up to the uh, king to make himself acceptable to the people. And that's where the Utsaha principle comes uh, to the forefront. Okay, now he also believed in the systematization of governance. Okay, he said it is extremely important that the king systematizes governance. Systematizes meaning he puts various systems dealing with the different aspects of the lives of the people in the kingdom. You should have various systems and they should cater to the people. So he is not looking at the king as a lord, okay, one who lords over his people. That he is not doing at all. Very much to the contrary, uh, he seems to be saying that create all these systems that will serve the necessities of the people. And if you're able to do that, then people will give consent to your rule. Now, the idea of consent, many people say now, including Western historians, they say that it is probably Chanakya or Kautilya who used the idea of consent of the people for legitimate ruling of a particular kingdom. Okay, and so they also say that he is probably somebody who systematized governance. Okay, till then there was no systematization of governance, uh, mainly because of the fact that people believe that the guidelines of a ruler for a ruler came from his understanding of the Dharma Shastras, the concept of Dharma, and all that. But with Kautilya, when he talks about the Artha Shastra, he's actually replacing the Dharma Shastras. Okay, he's no longer using a cosmic principle. He's no longer using a cosmic principle. he's using a very temporal. Temporal is time bound, and ephemeral. Ephemeral is also something which is there for some time and gone. Okay, when the king's life itself is ephemeral, nobody lives forever. So he believed that, in his own lifetime, the king should create systems of governance and get the consent of the people. This has led, I am not able to recollect. I've tried very hard. I think, I don't know why I am not able to recollect. A British historian actually made an observation that Chanakya or Kautilya is perhaps the first uh, ever constitutionalist in the world. Okay, what he meant by, he interprets this person whose name I hope I remember. Uh, when I remember, I'll tell you. Uh, which may not be in this class, by the way. I've been trying to think, it's not coming to me. And this man basically says that Chanakya, actually, when he talked about systematization, he was suggesting the creation of departments, like we have today, a department of agriculture, a department of revenue, a department for um, industries. We have governance happening through these various different uh, departments. So he says that, he might have talked about it as systematization, but he's the first one who, without using that particular word or its equivalent in Sanskrit, he actually talked about departmentalization of governance. That is what he says. This man, I hope to recollect his name sometime. And this man also says that by talking about consent, he's also creating a certain kind of constitutionalism. Okay, because a constitution, though today we see it as a social contract, uh, technically it is a social contract, the modern constitutions as we see them. But in his own time, he was talking about some kind of primitive constitutionalism, which is, uh, not having unlimited powers. Okay, not having unlimited powers, the king, and the king himself being answerable to various people, and also being in control of the laws that he makes. Okay, Chanakya does not believe in Manu. Chanakya does not believe in Manu as a lawgiver. He doesn't. Okay, neither did the early Vedas. This Manu thing happened somewhere in between. Like I said, it happened between 1250 BCE and 1000 BCE. So Manu, the lawgiver, is not something that Chanakya uh, approves of. For him, it is basically the king who makes laws. Before I get to that aspect of the king and making of laws, let me also get a few other things out of the way. Okay, one of the things that Kautilya says is that if a king and his dynasty have to survive, and if the kingdom has to thrive, then it should have fertile lands. So these are again everything that you see in Chanakya or Kautilya is something which is in the nature of a prescription. It is in the nature of a prescription. And Chanakya basically argues that any kingdom should have fertile lands. Okay, because without fertile lands, you cannot have agriculture, right? You cannot have agriculture if you do not have fertile lands. So he believed in that. So it is here, while he's not a warmonger, he doesn't say go and raid other kingdoms, annex them and make them your own, and let your empire grow. He doesn't seem to be exhorting a king. There is not much evidence of that kind of exhortation. But he does say that you have to, if you do not have an adequate number of fertile lands, then you have to somehow or the other get an access to them. It can be through war, or it can be through other things, which I shall discuss when I talk to you about his mandala theory. In the mandala theory, he gives how somebody can have access to things that are not there in his, a king uh, can have access to things that are not there in his own kingdom. And this needn't be through war. So when we talk about the mandala theory, I'll get to that little more in a little more detail. But he says that every king should strive to get fertile lands, because those days all economy and all monetary well-being came from agriculture. It all came from agriculture. It didn't come from any other source. So fertile lands is something that he suggests that a king should acquire. And another thing that he talks about is that the kingdom should be located where there are perennial rivers. Okay. Uh, Perennial rivers are those that flow through the year. So if you look at the Ganga, or if you look at the Yamuna, these are two prime examples of perennial rivers, because in the rainy season they flow thanks to the rains, but in the summer season they still flow because the glaciers from which these rivers are born, they are called Gangotri and Yamunotri. Okay, Gangotri is one glacier in the Himalayas, and the other one is Yamunotri. And Yamuna is a tributary of the Ganga, but it's not a tributary like Musi or Isa. We have these two wonderful drainages called rivers in Hyderabad, and these are, even at the time when they were not drainages, they were not really big rivers. Okay, though they are tributaries of the river Krishna, they are not really very big rivers. But Yamuna is, while it flows independently of the Ganga, it certainly is as big as the Ganga. Okay, though it is a tributary of the Ganga. And in fact, the cow belt, as it is referred to today, at one time was referred to as the Doab region, which is the region between the two rivers. In both Persian and in Sanskrit, Ab means river. Okay, so the Doab region is the region which falls in between the Ganga and the Yamuna, right? And so you see, he emphasizes that one should be near perennial rivers. When we went to school, we were taught that even rivers like Godavari and the Krishna, and apart from the Godavari and the Krishna, the Tunga and the Bhadra, which joined together to become the Tunga Bhadra. Okay, all these rivers, we were told, are perennial. And I remember traveling by train as a kid, and I remember very well that irrespective of the season, there would be water. Okay, because the trains used to go over bridges on the Krishna and the Godavari, and the bridge that was built by Sir Arthur Cotton uh, on the Godavari, which is I think it is a 3-kilometer long bridge, one of the longest. So the Godavari was an extremely wide river. And when it comes into flood, even now, the Godavari is a very wide river. The Krishna is not so wide, but construction of dams and construction of check dams. Okay, uh, check dams are, where you'll say, for the sake of agriculture, we'll put a small anicut or a mound where you'll say, we'll stop the flow here so that people can use the water. One of the reasons why the city of Hyderabad has no proper water is because of the fact that both the Musi River and its reservoir, which is called the Usman Sagar, or more popularly Gandipet, and the Isa River, uh, which has its reservoir, which is called the Himayat Sagar. If you look at these two uh, rivers, they also used to flow through the year. In fact, if you go to Vikarabad, there is a place called the Musi Bugga, and it is an underground spring from which the Musi comes. Okay, it is an underground spring from which the Musi comes, as does the Isa. Isa comes near Parigi. Okay, but it is the same story with both the Krishna and the Godavari. In their origins, they are underground. Okay, it is water that flows out, but the increased population and the greater and greater pressure on these rivers have made them non-perennial. In the summers, they are all dry everywhere, not just the tributaries, even the main Godavari and the Krishna River. But otherwise, these were perennial rivers. But they are not perennial anymore. Okay, and I don't know, Kaleshwaram seems to be a good thing, but what if there isn't adequate rainfall? Then what? That will be a question worth asking, but this is not about that, so let's not talk about it. So he also says that a kingdom should be located near a perennial river or a perennial source of water, because you also have lakes, like you have the Kolleru Lake, uh, which is a freshwater lake, and it is a perennial lake. I think Kolleru is somewhere in between Vijayawada and Eluru. I'm not sure. That could be completely wrong. I have forgotten where it is, Kolleru. But I remember, unlike the Pulikat lake, which is saltwater lake, the Kolleru lake is a freshwater lake and one of the biggest in the country, not just in the southern part, but in the whole part. So he says any civilization should be located upon uh, near rather a perennial water source and uh, should have fertile lands. And for some reason, he also says it should have adequate forest cover. Now, some people have interpreted it environmentally, and they say that what he meant by this is, if you have forest, then you'll have rains. Now, I really don't know if that was his reason. Uh, One simply cannot discount this, because many a time we have seen that our ancients have had knowledge about the world which we think they never had. Okay, ours is a very, very technologically reliant, uh, technology reliant civilization. So we think, that we can do things which our ancients couldn't do. But our ancients were better than us in more ways than one. For example, uh, our mathematics. Mathematics was so good without any instruments, nothing. People just did mental calculations and predicted celestial events precisely to the second, which is a phenomenal exercise. Mathematicians like Aryabhatta, Bhaskaracharya, many others. Okay, uh, so our ancients were not stupid; they were great. And I think I also told you that when it came to Rajaraja Chola's building of the temple complex in Madurai, it's all built with granite. And Westerners came here and they were completely baffled by the idea as to how did people cut granite, because granite is one of the most difficult stones to cut. Okay, and then they tried and they realized that you needed to have uh, a river of water and then an iron wheel spinning and water falling to cut the granite stone. That is the way we do it now, even in India. But in the time of Rajaraja Chola, apparently all they did was carved out small little cube-like holes into granite stones and took sal wood, which is very, very strong, and they dipped it in water for a certain time till it became completely sodden with water. And then they beat that into that cube-like hole that they made. And in 2 days, the granite just split. It split open. So one can't discount the idea that he probably talked about forests as an environmental factor for having good rainfall. So it's not like uh, our ancients were incapable of such thought. So I wouldn't completely discount it. But I don't know if I can, one should accept it because there is no proof of his talking, of his having talked about the environment. But a more acceptable uh, explanation for forests seems to be that, you know, you can use techniques of guerrilla warfare against your enemies. Okay, forests are wonderful places to ambush your enemy. And so if you have a forest and your armed forces are trained to basically understand how the forest is, and by being where or by luring the enemy into which part of the forest you can ambush them and defeat them, kill them actually, and defeat them later. So it does seem as if the Chanakya also used it in a strategic way. The idea of a forest being a strategic thing, that is definitely acceptable. But he also might have thought of it from an environmental point of view, because people now believe that only forest cover uh, basically brings rain. Forest cover has two purposes environmentally. One is that it brings rain, it attracts rain. The second thing is that if there are thick forests, then the soil, topsoil as it is called on the top, that does not get eroded. Okay, that does not get eroded. So maybe he knew these, so he might have been talking about those. So we'll just have to keep a rain check on that. And we'll have to say maybe he was also talking about it from the point of view of what it can do for the kingdom environmentally. Not environment, he's not, please don't look at it as he's an environmentalist who's trying to preserve the environment. Okay, environmentalism and preservation of the environment, these are all new things that have happened to us because we have mercilessly cut forests. I think the forest cover in India, though officially they say it is 9% or 8% or something, I doubt if it is 8%. It is more like 4% perhaps. And that is the reason why we have the vagaries of weather in India today, you know. So the vagaries of the weather come with environmental denudation. So that is a different thing that we talk about. Then the other, I'll just make this point. It says I have less than a minute. I'll just make this point and stop. We will also have, I'm sorry, Kautilya or Chanakya also talks about the necessity of a robust economic policy. This is something that I'll talk to you tomorrow. But before I leave today, uh, I don't know, there is a good possibility that we will be asked to conduct two exams for the second semester as well. So you please be ready to, I will put a message for you